Okie dokie. Hello, everybody. My name's Jay. I'm one of the expert IELTS teachers here at E2 Language. In this live class, I'm going to give you 8 top tips to score 8+. Okay. Yes, I should know how to do this. Let me tell you a little story. The story is this. I got stuck on 7.5 in IELTS writing 3 times before I managed to then get 8.5 on my 4th attempt. I could get 9 on reading, listening, and speaking. Well, not with no problem. That was certainly difficult in itself, but I got stuck on 7.5 for writing. It was incredibly frustrating until I did some research about how the examiners mark you in your IELTS. So what this live class is going to be about is about what you need to do to satisfy the examiners. You need to know what they're looking for in your writing, okay? So let's go through and do that, and hopefully we'll boost your band score significantly. Before we do that though, if you're on YouTube Live and you're not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button. I think as of today, we're about 97,000. We want to reach 100,000 subscribers, and click like if you like this video. Okay, so this crazy matrix is what the IELTS examiners look at when they're marking your writing. You can see on the left-hand side there the band scores from band 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, right? And so they look at these things. They look at 4 things when they're marking your writing. We're going to go through them in this live class, and I'm going to give you top tips on each of them, okay? So the first one's called task achievement. Let me show you how to get +8 or 8 and above in task achievement. Task achievement, in short, means that when you describe your graph, you're describing relevant features, okay? You're describing relevant features. That's how you get a high score for task achievement. It's easier said than done. Let me show you what you need to do. So here's the graph. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to analyze this graph. Okay, so we want to describe key features. The first step is to actually understand what you're looking at, and I think that is a step that most people fail to do. They start writing before they've fully understood this graph. So let's break down this graph. What you want to do when you're looking at the graph is notice the indicators, the legend here. So we're talking about men. In this left-hand part of the graph, we're talking about males. In the right-hand part, divided by this little line here, we're talking about females, okay? Males here, females there. Cool? All right, now that we know that division, let's look at what the gray versus the black is. So the black, this represents full-time education. So these 3 are full-time education for males, while these 3 are full-time education for females. Similarly, these are part-time education for males. These indicate part-time education for females, okay? Then you want to understand the y-axis, so it's number of men and women in further education in thousands, 200,000, 400,000, etc., up to 1 million, 1.2 million. Then you want to go one step further. So you've identified the important aspects. Now you need to, well, if you're going to describe relevant features of this graph, you need to understand what's going on. So let's look at males in full-time education. So you can see there's a slight increase, a consistent increase. What about females in full-time education? We can see there's quite a jump here, and then it sort of tapers off. What about males in part-time education? Well, it fluctuates. What about females in part-time education? Well, it's quite a consistent rise there, okay? These are the key features. And what also you might note is that Well, personally, I think this jump here is significant. And I think this jump here is significant. And I think the males one is sort of not that interesting. So now that we've analyzed this, we can start to break it down. Of course, the first thing you want to do is take the graph description that's written for you and you want to rewrite it into your own words. So let's read this. It says the chart below shows the number of men and women in further education in Britain in 3 periods and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. So here's mine. And I want you to read this. I'll give you 30 seconds and ask yourself, do these two say the exact same thing? The answer is yes. Let's go through it step by step. So the original said the chart below shows. I said the bar chart illustrates. Same thing, different words. The number of men and women in further education in Britain. The number of males and females engaged in further education in Britain. They said in 3 periods and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. I said it shows whether they were studying full-time or part-time and is divided into 3 periods. So these two have been written exactly the same using different words. Therefore, my task achievement, whether I'm describing the graph accurately, is so far above an 8, which is a good thing. Now I'm going to move on and write the rest of it, but I have forgotten what the next slide is. I'm not going to go through this actually. I'm just going to leave that on the screen for a second because what we'll do is we'll read this as we go throughout the presentation, okay? But if you do want to pause this and read my description, these are the 3 body paragraphs, you certainly can. But on test day, there are 2 tips for task achievement. First tip is this. You need to spend at least a minute understanding the graph. Don't just start writing without understanding the graph. Break it down piece by piece. Look at the details of the graph, like the legend, the y-axis, the titles, the subtitles, for example. Then look at the graph in more detail and look at the trends, the ups, the downs, the fluctuations, the rises, the falls, etc. And more specifically, what you need to do there is you need to find and look for the most noticeable features. If something went jump like that, or if something dropped significantly, maybe they're quite similar, but maybe there are 2 main features. You will need to describe those 2 main features in your description. Number 2, describe key features only. Don't describe boring features. You just want to describe the key features only. Cool. Let's look at the second band or the second criterion that you're graded on. It's called coherence and cohesion, but we're not going to call it that. We're going to call it structure and flow. So this is the second thing that the IELTS examiners grade you on. And what do you need to do to get 8+? Let's look at structure first, okay? Look at structure first, then we'll look at flow. So the structure, well, the first paragraph, well, or it could be a single sentence, is the graph description. And that's the one I just showed you. And that's copied from the original one. It needs to say the exact same thing in different words. So in effect, you're paraphrasing it. Then you'll have your overview paragraph where you look at those main trends and you look at the key differences between men and women, or you look at the key differences between part-time study and full-time study, for example. And you don't want to go into detail here. You don't want to use numbers from the y-axis because in the next paragraph, you start to drill deeper. And what I did, for example, is my third paragraph here. I talked about full-time education, the key features, and I described them with numbers. You can start to see the numbers in my paragraphs here. Here you can see a year, that's fine, but here you can start to see numbers from the y-axis, right? Now, in my fourth paragraph, I'll talk about part-time education, the key features of part-time education, comparing men and women, and I'll also, again, use numbers. So again, you can see here, I've used numbers like 1,000,000, 900,000, 800,000, etc. I've also used the years as well. Okay, so that's the structure. Now, is there a set structure? Should you use 3, always use 3, or always use 4? Well, it depends on what you're looking at, and it depends on the decisions you make when you're analyzing your graph, right? Because you look at it and you say, okay, there's men, there's women, there's part-time education, there's full-time education. And you ask yourself, how am I going to divide this up? What am I going to do here? So the key tip here is on test day, plan your structure before you write. Okay, just on the graph itself, on that booklet where you see the graph, you can draw up a little plan. Okay, think of your plan before you write, because if you start writing before you have planned, you will end in disaster. Well, it's not going to be too bad, but you want to take this test once and once only. So let's look at the second part here, which is flow. Okay, so we've looked at structure, let's look at flow. Structure means the overall structure, like how many paragraphs, etc., the sort of introductory paragraph, the body paragraphs. No conclusion, by the way. You're not concluding anything. You conclude in an essay. This is a description only, so no conclusions. Flow means how within those paragraphs the sentences are connected and how the ideas join and connect and flow from one to the next, okay? So let's look at this because you're also graded on this. So here you can see the subject, the bar chart, and then you can see the pronoun it. Now, in the IELTS, they look at your ability to use pronouns, to change a noun phrase into a pronoun, for example. Males and females become they, okay? So that's one part of flow, changing nouns to pronouns. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, here we've done it again. We've talked about the number of men and women, and then we've used those, or those studying full-time. In other words, men and women. Okay, here we start to make complex sentences using while, there was, especially in, when. These are rather examples of how you use words to create flow within the sentence. So the sentence isn't going, it's going da, 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 da. That's what you want to do. Let's look at some other ones. I know that's not a very technical explanation, but trust me, you probably don't want a technical explanation. With regards to male students, for women, rising sharply, and then, so you can see how I'm creating flow by using various words in here. The number of males fluctuated, dropping from to, women increased from to in. So let's look at these green ones here because these are prepositions. So from to, in, year. You can start to see how that flow is being created by the use of prepositions here. And you can also see that this whole paragraph is in fact one single sentence being coordinated by this word meanwhile. So it's like a seesaw. I don't know if when you're a kid, you used to go on the seesaw, right? You'd have the two people here. Sorry, that person looks a bit weird. So does this one. But you have the seesaw. And this word here is acting like the fulcrum of the seesaw. It's balancing that sentence out. So that's the sort of thing that you want to do. So on test day, tip number 4 is to consider your sentence before you write it. The problem with handwriting, so if you're taking the paper-based IELTS, is there's no backspace key. And there's also no mouse where you can insert something. So the way to get around this is to think of your sentence before you write it. Again, don't just start writing and go, oh, that doesn't make sense. That's a terrible sentence. It's really clunky. So what you need to do is go, okay, so say the sentence in your mind. Okay, The number of males in part-time study fluctuated over the period while the number of females remained steady. Okay, great, got it. Then you write it down, okay? So again, tip number 4 is to consider your sentence before you write it to make sure your flow is good. Let's look at the third criterion. This is the third thing that the IELTS examiners look at while they're marking your writing, okay? They have this matrix in front of them. Lexical resource just means vocabulary. So let's look at the top tips to get 8+. But what we're going to do, in fact, is break it down into 2 parts because there's vocabulary range and there's vocabulary precision. So they look at 2 aspects of the way you use words. Let's look at range first. So there are a number of problems with this description. Let me point them out to you. This would get you like an IELTS 5 or possibly even an IELTS 4. The bar chart, the bar chart, the bar chart. The number of males and females, the males and females, the number of males and females, males and females, you can see that being repeated numerous times. Look in the first paragraph, look at the verbs, shows, shows. Look in the second paragraph, outnumbered, outnumbered. And look at the rest of these verbs, increased, 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 increased. So on test day, if you're repeating a word, you need to think of a synonym, okay? So that refers to range. That's the breadth or how many words in English you know. So you want to show off a little bit. You want to use a range of different verbs. So synonyms are key. So for example, if you had the verb shows, the graph shows, well, the graph illustrates is a nice way to do that. Or you could even say the graph depicts, okay? But here's where you need to be careful, and that leads us on to the next part, which is precision. So here's how you get an 8+ for precision. Let me read you this unbelievably confusing yet very common piece of writing, or a piece of writing that people do this all the time. The bar chart elucidates the sheer number of men and females seized in further education in Britain. It shows whether they were scholarly full-time or part-time and is divided into 3 epochs. Does that sound impressive to you? Does that sound good? Does that sound precise? To me, that is what is technically known as gobbledygook. That's what Turkeys say. It doesn't make any sense, okay? The beautiful words, elucidate, scholarly, epochs, but they're used incorrectly. They're used imprecisely. So there's a little key here. Oh, before I do that, this is what the difference is. Here we have a horse, right? This is a horse. And a horse has short ears, small round eyes, and a long face, right? Here we have a donkey. Donkey has long ears, darkened at the edges, wide eyes, and a short face. And here we have a mule. A mule has wide eyes, a long face, and a large muzzle. When you're using words incorrectly, so instead of saying time periods, for example, and you write epochs, well, in this context, it's like mistaking a horse from a donkey or a donkey from a mule. Okay, so you need to be careful with the words that you choose because the words have specific meanings and you want to make sure that you're precise with what you say. Because the IELTS examiner, it doesn't matter how beautiful and fancy that word is, if it's imprecise, you'll be marked down. So the key to this one is on test day, only use words you know are 100% precise. Okay? In other words, don't use words you don't know completely. Cool bananas. Let's look at the last criterion that the IELTS examiners mark you on. It's called grammatical range and accuracy. And again, it has 2 parts. So it's about grammar this time, but there are 2 parts. And this is the one that used to get me. This is the one that I think brought down my mark to 7.5. That's why I got stuck. Because my grammar is, well, I I won't say perfect because it is possible that to make little mistakes here and there, but pretty good. I really understand grammar and I like grammar and I'm very confident in the way that I write, etc. That's accuracy. That's not range. Range is just as, actually, almost more important than accuracy, okay? Range, again, refers to the variety of sentence structures that you can create, okay? So let's look at some bad examples of grammatical range. The bar chart shows the number of males and females studying in Britain. The bar chart also illustrates whether males and females were studying full-time or part-time. The bar chart finally depicts 3 periods. There are more men studying part-time than women. There are ... There are ... The number of men increased. The number of women decreased. The number of people fluctuated. So basically here, I've used 3 sentence types. I've used a simple present verb, shows, illustrates, and depicts. Okay, so I've just used the simple present here. I've used there are 3 times. And then I've used the number increased, the number decreased, the number fluctuated with a past tense verb. Okay, so don't get me wrong. It's not about using as many different verb types as you possibly can because you have to use the right verb at the right time. It's not so much about verb types. It's about sentence structures, okay? So really, you can think about it, grammatical range as, are you just writing simple sentences? You know, the cat ate the dog. Are you just writing compound sentences? The cat ate the dog and the cat and the dog. The cat ate the dog? All right, that's weird. Usually doesn't happen. The cat ate the dog and the cat ate the mouse. That's a compound sentence. Or what you need to do, sorry, forgive my crazy examples there. What you need to do is you need to use, here's the technical term, subordinate clauses, because you will get stuck on band 4 if you use a limited range of subordinate clauses. See, what happens here is native speakers will take the IELTS test and they'll have perfect grammar, fabulous vocabulary range. They can structure up the essay beautifully with coherence and structure and flow, etc. But they'll just be writing in simple or compound sentences. And the maximum grammar score you can get, even if it's 100% accurate, is 4. The reason why the IELTS do this is they want you to show that you have the ability to write a range of different sentence types, okay? So what I mean by that is, yes, you need to write complex sentences using subordination, which I'll show you in a second. You should probably try to slip a question sentence in there. You should use modal verbs, must, might, could, etc. You could even put in a conditional sentence like if the students had returned to school early, then the teacher would not have been angry. Okay, you've got to try and all of those sentence types that you probably learned in high school, you need to try and include a range of them. So when you're writing that sentence, think, how can I turn this into a more interesting sentence type? Okay, it's a bit of a trick to that one. Here's the trick. If you do not use these words, you cannot get more than 4 for grammar. And what I mean by these words is the way that you use them in a sentence. Let's take the word although. This is a good example of a subordinate sentence or subordinate clause, okay? So when we do this, we do it like this. You know these sentences that are like, although, ... comma, ... That's called subordination because it's effectively 2 parts and it's balancing using that although. Or you can say ... although, ... So the one that you use most in the academic writing task 1 is while, because you can say something like the number of men studying part-time increased while the number of women decreased. Okay, so that's a common one, but again, you don't want to overuse it. So another one that I like is meanwhile. That's a nice way to create certainly a coordinated sentence. Meanwhile, while. But have a look at these and pause the video and try and write some sentences that use these words because these are the words that create subordinate clauses And subordinate clauses are the types of sentences that raise your grammar score up to 8 and above. I'm sorry it's so complex. Here's mine. So I've got the word whether, while, when, and meanwhile. So I've used 4, well, in fact, I've used a number of complex sentences, but these ones are distinctly subordinate types of sentences there, but you need to practice them. It's a good idea. Go back into that part of the video with that list and just start practicing writing those think of them as two-part sentences, where that although or that while or that whereas or that even though sort of balances the two parts of the sentence. The word can come at the beginning or in the middle, okay? So practice writing a few of those, because without them, you're not going to get past 7.5. Okay, grammatical accuracy. We've talked about a range. Of course, it needs to be accurate as well. So here's the very important tip for that one. Before test day, if you haven't already, sign up to e2language.com, because we can give you feedback on your writing, and you can take one-on-one tutorials on Zoom, which is a program like Skype, with IELTS experts, okay? They are, well, ex-IELTS examiners, so they certainly know what's going on. Okay, and that's the website you should go to. And on test day, here's the last tip, because we've finished all of the criteria. Make sure you write more than 150 words, because if you do not exceed 150 words, your score will immediately decrease by possibly 1 to 1.5 bands, okay? In other words, don't write 149 words. This one, for example, is 168 words. That's it. Cool. If you have any questions, by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube live and you have any questions about what our packages are or what the website is, you go to help.e2language, that's a G.com. help.e2language.com, and send a ticket and we'll answer any of the questions you have about the IELTS and whatnot. Anyway, that's all. I just wanted to give you those 8 tips. I think I missed one, but anyway. Hold on. I think there's another one. I think there was tip number 9, which was, use complex sentences. Okay, let's go through this. I'm sorry, I have to edit this right now in front of you. These are, I've just decided it's 9 tips. I think I need to make this 9 tips. 9 tips. Okay, let's go through those 9 tips one more time. Here we go. So before test day, sign up to e2language.com. Good idea. On test day, spend a minute understanding the graph. Don't just start writing. Number 3, describe key features only. Okay? Don't describe boring features. Describe key features only. Plan your structure before you write. Think about your paragraphing structure. You know what the introductory paragraph is going to be. You just rewrite the the graph description. Then in the second paragraph, you write the overview paragraph. But in the third and fourth, and possibly even fifth, it depends, you need to think about how you will divide up your description into meaningful, logical paragraphs. Number 5, you need to consider your sentence before you write it to make sure that it flows nicely. And if you're repeating a word, you need to think of a synonym, right? You don't want the same repetition of words. You can think of a synonym. But if you can't think of a synonym because there's only one word for that particular word, for example, the word children, I mean, there's kids, but you don't want to say that because it's informal. So children really is the only word for children. Young adults is not, again, it's imprecise. That's a donkey versus a mule. You don't want to do that. So make sure it's precise. So only use words that you know 100%. Number 8, use complex sentences as much as possible using those words I showed you. And number 9, because now all of a sudden we've got 9 tips 9 tips. Make sure you write more than 150 words. They are, my friends, the 9 key tips to getting a good score in the IELTS. If you do all of those, then you should be well on your way. Cool bananas. Let me answer some questions. And I'll start with the Zoom people.